Welcome to NACTV Reads the News. My name is Gwen Jacobsen, and I'm one of many volunteers that help create programming for our station. NACTV can be seen on MTS Channel 30 or 1030, Westman Cable Channel 17, Bell Satellite Channel 592, or online at nactv.tv. These programs are made possible by our viewers, our volunteers, staff, advertisers, as well as donations made by you, the viewers. If you are enjoying your NACTV experience, please consider supporting us by either donation or volunteering. You can contact our office at 204-476-2639 or at nactv@wcgwave.ca. This week's edition of the Neepawa Banner and Press is dated Friday, April 21st, 2023. And on the front page, we have a beautiful picture that was taken by Jody Baker of Neepawa. It was taken on March 23rd and depicts the aurora borealis over the rural municipality of Rosedale. Jody's artwork can be purchased locally at Harris Pharmacy, ArtsForward, Neepawa Home Hardware, and in Rivers they can be found at Karina's Boutique. They can also be purchased by contacting Jody directly through her Facebook page. And also on the front page, there's an article entitled HyLife Plans to Sell Minnesota Processing Plant by Ken Waddell of the Neepawa Banner and Press. HyLife is planning to sell their hog processing plant at Windham, Minnesota. The proposed sale has been reported in various American media outlets. When asked to confirm if that was so and if the Canadian HyLife operations were going to be affected, the company's CEO, Grant Lazarek, said, "Our industry has been facing unprecedented external challenges such as inflation, high grain costs, and exchange rates that are affecting businesses and customers alike. HyLife's top priority is to position our business for long-term growth and stability. As a result, we have had to make some difficult decisions," said Lazarek. "Unfortunately, our leadership is moving forward with pursuing a sale of the Windham, Minnesota facility so that the plant can continue under new ownership. This is a change only to U.S. operations that will see HyLife focus its business in Canada and build on our Canadian advantage. Our Canadian operations and integrated business are strong and stable. HyLife's Neepawa, Manitoba plant will continue as normal and will not be impacted." And it goes on to say, in his comments to the Banner and Press, HyLife CEO Lazarek added that Neepawa has a long history of successful operations, deep relationships in our community and with customers, and we are committed to continuing to operate at 100% in Neepawa. Lazarek concluded by saying, "Our Canadian advantage is rooted in our industry-leading and integrated business, and we are focused on continuing to raise hogs and process premium products. More than ever, we are proud of our dedicated team of hardworking employees, our Canadian business, and established track record. HyLife is the largest employer in the Neepawa region, and at last report has in excess of 1,600 employees. HyLife was formerly Spring Hill Farms, which began in the late 1980s and expanded when HyLife took over in 2008. Since the takeover by HyLife, the town of Neepawa population has nearly doubled and is now estimated to be around 6,000 people." Next, we have an article about ArtsForward by Casper Werhan. A selection of Neepawa students are showing off their creative muscles to the public for the first time. Works from the local students featuring a wide swath of mediums, are all on display at ArtsForward until April 28th. Last Friday, grade 10 student representatives Empress Ferraris, Fatima Malari, and Evelyn Cortez were on the scene providing tours of the exhibit to younger students and answering any questions they may have. The banner and press had the opportunity to speak with them and learn more about the works on display. It's a little overwhelming and a big thing for us to show our work like this for the first time, said Cortez. Mallory added, "We're very excited to show it as well, though." The first items highlighted were a set of hollow sculptures created using tape with the assistance of students acting as their models. "The one we worked on was the fairy on the swing," said Cortez. "Fatima was the model for it. It took 2 weeks to complete. It was a lot of work." The overall theme for the tape sculptures, of which there are 4 on display, was Enchanted Forest. Accompanying the representative's own sculpture is a fairy sitting on mushrooms, an elf, and even a demogorgon from the popular show known as Stranger Things. In addition to the tape sculptures, a variety of other sculptures using old books, recycled cardboard, and clay are present, along with dioramas, sketches, pastel drawings, plasticine paintings, and mixed media portraits and collages that include quotes which inspired their creator. All of these are projects that we completed with our art teacher, Miss Martin, said Ferraris. It's pretty cool. While Malari, Ferraris, and Cortez are proud of their own work, they found themselves drawn to other mediums in the exhibit as well. Mallory's to the mixed media collages, Ferraris to the repurposed books, and Cortez to the pastels and dioramas. It's easy to see why. Every project's unique medium was an exercise in showing students just how vast the opportunity for creation extends. Just about anything can be used to create something if an idea is present. In a closing statement on behalf of all students involved, Cortez said, "We feel very honored by this opportunity, and we hope that the viewers who see the exhibit will be inspired by the work too." I think there's another page here too that shows a little bit more from that exhibit. Yeah, here. Pictured here are some more samples of the works made by Neepawa students that are currently on display at ArtsForward. These pieces of art and many more are all able to be viewed at the Neepawa Gallery until April the 28th. So here we have a mountain scene. It's not painted with paint, but made with plasticine. And here, something was made with clay. Explorations with clay are an arts class classic with many possibilities. Here we have a portrait was made for an oil pastel project featuring either people or animals. And this scene demonstrates just one of the many possibilities for repurposing a book that would otherwise have been thrown out. Helen Drysdale, out of Helen's Kitchen. This week it's about make-ahead salads. These make-ahead salad recipes are perfect for potlucks, parties, and family gatherings because they can be prepared earlier in the day and then refrigerated until ready to use. So there's no last-minute mess to clean, so you gotta love that. This layered salad can be made into a full meal deal by adding 3 or 4 hard-boiled eggs and a cup of diced ham. So there's a recipe for a layered salad and a Greek bean salad. Now we're going to go on to Neepawa's new budget sees slight tax hike by Owen Devereaux. We will be paying just a little bit extra in taxes this year as the municipal levy is set to increase by 1.5%. For the average Neepawa homeowner, that means they will pay an additional $44.55 in taxes per $300,000 of their assessed property value. The town of Neepawa unveiled those numbers as well as other details from its 2023 financial plan on Tuesday, April 18th. The mill rate for the year has been set at 22.39. The mill rate is a figure representing the amount per $1,000 of the assessed value of the property, which is used to calculate the amount of property tax. This year's increase in taxes for residential and commercial property owners is slightly less than what was seen in 2022, as last year's municipal levy increased by 1.57%. For the general operating fund, this year it will be an estimated $19,292,396. That number is just over $2.3 million more than had been budgeted in 2022. The largest increase within this portion of the budget is seen in transportation services, as it is growing from $6.1 million to $11.2 million. The reason for this nearly 84% increase is related to roads upgrades and installation, primarily on the lands surrounding the town's new health center. Meanwhile, fiscal services / capital will drop from nearly $6 million in spending last year to only $2.7 million, a 54.5% decrease. Spending on capital purchases for the year will equal $2,324,818. The primary purchases for the town of Neepawa will include the following. For office capital, $8,000 for furniture and computer upgrades. For public works / cemetery, $550,000 for road construction, $355,000 for training center, $295,818 for cemetery redesign / columbarium, $103,000 for drainage, and $14,500 for lawn equipment. For parks and recreation, $687,500 for pathway development, and $311,000 for the Neepawa swimming pool. And it goes on to say the amount that has been set aside for the town of Neepawa's utility operating fund within its annual budget will be $8,065,660. That amount is $731,700 less than what was seen in last year's budget. Capital purchases from utilities include the following. $3.3 million for Phase 2 of the wastewater treatment plant, $1.5 million for development projects, $1.2 million for well mechanization and booster, and $10,000 for water meters. For this year, $133,976.75 will be set aside for grant requests from 10 local organizations. The largest individual grant distributed this year will be $100,000 for the Yellowhead Center. That amount remains unchanged from what the Yellowhead received in 2022. The funding has been given to assist with a portion of the volunteer-operated facilities maintenance and operational costs. Other organizations receiving support this year from the grant program include the following. $15,000 to ArtsForward, amount unchanged from 2022. $5,000 towards Neepawa baseball and softball, which is unchanged. $4,000 to the Neepawa Curling Club, which is a $6,000 decrease. $3,126.75 goes to hand, which is an increase of $591.80. $2,500 towards Beautiful Plains doctor recruitment, which is unchanged. $1,500 towards Citizens on Patrol, which is unchanged. $1,000 towards Margaret Lawrence, which is unchanged. $1,000 towards Neepawa in Bloom, which is unchanged. And finally, $850 towards Lions Club, which is unchanged. The first reading of the 2023 budget was given and approved on Tuesday, April 18th. Second and third reading will likely occur at the next council meeting on Tuesday, May the 2nd. Job Opportunities Aplenty in Neepawa by Owen Devereaux. If you are looking for work, an event planned for ArtsForward has you covered, as final preparations are underway for the Neepawa Economic Development Job Fair. As previously mentioned in the Banner and Press March 24th edition, the fair is being staged through the combined efforts of Neepawa's Economic Development, Neepawa and Area Immigrant Settlement Services, Westlake Employment Skills and Services Center, and the Neepawa and District Chamber of Commerce. It is planned for Tuesday, April 25th. Marilyn Crew, the Economic Development Officer with the Town of Neepawa, said the response from area businesses is very encouraging, as 17 companies and organizations have registered as of April 18th. That's an increase from the 9 that were involved in 2022. Crew added another positive aspect of the event is the variety of job openings within the area, as full-time, part-time, and seasonal/term job postings are expected to be showcased. The Neepawa Economic Development Job Fair is scheduled for Tuesday, April 25th from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. at ArtsForward, and everyone is welcome to attend. Now we have a rural outlook page, and it's talking first of all about Erickson to kick off inaugural Altitude Festival by Casper Werhan. A brand new agricultural event is coming to the Banner and Press coverage area. On April 29th, Erickson will be hosting its first ever Altitude Festival. The agriculture-centered festival is an initiative started by the community's nonprofit thrift shop, known as the Score Store, and is supported by the Erickson Chamber of Commerce. Steve Langston, president of SCORE, provided the Banner and Press with the details. He said the name for the festival came because one of our board members at the Score Store told us that Erickson was the highest elevation town in our province. That was something that I was in disbelief of at first, but it turns out that it is, and we thought that was something pretty unique. The idea for the festival itself came from the developments that have been seen in Erickson and the surrounding area throughout the years, specifically growth in the local food movement and small farms. These developments include the addition of a greenhouse and food security hub, a microgreens facility, and much more. He said we're really starting to see a lot of momentum happening within that space, which is something that makes everyone pretty happy. There's a lot of interest in people moving to rural communities for a better quality of life. And I think when people are thinking about moving to a smaller community, things like sustainability, gardening, and being resilient are all things that they're thinking about I also feel that we need to shorten up the supply chain of our food, which is really important. We thought that doing an event around that could be pretty interesting. Erickson Chamber President Eric Bjornson concurred, adding, "It's an event that has a lot of long-term potential, and we were really interested in partnering for its inaugural year. It fits really well with the developments we've had here, and hopefully in the coming years it will draw in more people interested in sustainable communities and rural agriculture." Sessions for the inaugural event include presentations from Ryan Boyd of South Glanton Farms on cattle being the solution to many modern environmental challenges, Tim Engbrecht of Parkland Permaculture regarding permaculture, Dan Lane, a Brandon beekeeper, providing an introduction to beekeeping, and a farm tour of the Huey homegrown operation just east of Erickson. An introduction to gardening for kids will also be hosted that day, and music from Sweet Alibi provided at the end of the day. A schedule with full details can be found on the Altitude Festival's website. I'm definitely excited to attend the workshops myself. I know some of the speakers and others I don't, and it seems really interesting and quite broad. It's incredibly nice to see these presenters willing to come and share their experience with everyone, said Bjornson. It's a great community building event, and the content is extremely relevant, especially with rising food prices. That and learning face-to-face on these subjects is quite valuable. Langston added, "We hope that with our speakers coming in and sharing their perspectives, that it can help people learn from their mistakes and experience instead of having to go out and figure out some of these concepts on your own. You can learn from somebody who's been there and done that." Providing a final comment, Bjornson stated, "It's really excellent to see a new event like this organized, and hopefully it'll be a success now and into the future. There is no cost for attending the festival, but monetary donations are welcome in order to assist with covering the speaker honorariums." Now we have a picture of Neepawa's glory years entitled "No Gas Needed." This buggy was traversing the streets of Gladstone in 1906. No names were available for the driver and passenger. This photo was a feature in the Gladstone's Glory Years booklet series. Okay. Historic Numbers for Neepawa-Gladstone Co-op by Owen Devereaux. It was a record-setting year for sales at the Neepawa-Gladstone Co-op. That positive news is somewhat tempered, however, by the fact it was also a record-setting year for the cost of goods sold by the local cooperative. The business held its annual general meeting on Wednesday, April the 12th at the ArtsForward building in Neepawa. This get-together featured reports from Jason Sumner on behalf of the Board of Directors, Co-op General Manager Brian Headley, as well as an overview of the current financial outlook. So here's a look at the numbers. For 2022, the total sales increased by just over $14.7 million to $110,205,990. Wow. The cost of purchasing these goods to sell, however, also rose year over year by nearly $14.8 million. That means that while it was still a profitable year for the co-op, the margins remained stagnant. In 2022, there were 700 new memberships purchased, which was up from 451 the previous year. That brings the total membership to just under 9,000. Patronage refunds were allocated to the membership in the amount of $2.4 million. for global issues and local impact. In his formal presentation, General Manager Brian Headley noted that the local co-op was impacted heavily by 2022 by several global events. Effects from both the pandemic and the war in Ukraine led to several ongoing changes for our co-op. Supply chain issues impacted almost every area of our business, and inflation increased prices to the point of challenging consumer spending, stated Headley in his AGM report. The war became a major disruptive force in commodity markets such as wheat, food, energy, and global markets. Ukraine and Russia have always been large exporters of grain, corn, and other products. Grain prices reached record levels due to fears of shortages and overly strong demand, which in turn benefited our local farmers. Headley also cited higher energy costs and inflationary pressures as notable factors in overall operational numbers. So here's a divisional breakdown of a few areas. First is the food division. Last year, the Gladstone food store sales increased compared to 2021 and were ahead of budget. This was the exception as opposed to the rule around the trading area, as co-op customers were able to start moving around and shopping in some of the larger areas. Margins were down slightly as more customers were shopping for deals due to rising costs and trying to make their dollars go farther. As for the Neepawa food store, its grocery sales dropped last year, though that change was expected. In 2021, there was a decrease in travel to larger centers due to COVID-19. With 2022 seeing a return to normal travel for consumers, the local sale numbers went back to expectations. The grocery department has expanded the world foods section, focusing on Filipino products, and saw a substantial increase in sales in this area. The deli department went against the declining trend as many of the products continued to gain momentum, including fresh rotisserie chicken, fried chicken, and freshly made pizzas. Next, for the home center division. The Neepawa-Gladstone experienced a tremendous year. While it was down slightly from 2021's record sales, customers continue to support local. The new facility has seen the floor space more than double in size, and the addition of chalet flooring has been a tremendous success. The home center and Parkside Gardens will be working together this spring to build a permanent 4,000 square foot garden center that will operate throughout the growing season. The grand opening is to take place this spring on May 11th to 13th. The Gladstone farm and building sales were down slightly from the previous year. Margins and expenses were close to budget. Next to break down is the petroleum division. Sales at both gas bar locations remained stable, but the high prices reduced additional travel that had been seen in 2021. Margins were very strong throughout the year, and with good expense control, the gas bars achieved record savings. Car wash sales last year started off strong in the spring, but slowly tapered off throughout the rest of the year. Sales were down compared to 2021, but that had been an unusually strong year. Bulk petroleum department leaders were stable and sales were up due to inflated pricing. Margins were strong and expenses kept in line to provide the department with a better than budget year. The new card lock facility suffered a setback in December when a large wind destroyed the hoarding used to heat and dry the concrete. Fortunately, there had not been a significant amount of concrete poured, and the portion that froze had to be removed to start over again. The card lock will be officially opened on Tuesday, April 25th, and ready for spring customers and the traveling summer traffic. Next is the agro division. 2022 was an extremely difficult year with excess moisture delaying seeding to the point that some of the trading area went unseeded. The Neepawa-Gladstone trading area was one of the last locations in Western Canada to get the crops in, and we experienced shortages in most crop input products. The war in Ukraine also created massive dislocations in the fertilizer markets, as Russia is normally a large exporter of nitrogen fertilizers to Canada and the US. Fertilizer prices reached record highs and created large disruptions in the market. Sales and margins were down at the agro locations, which resulted in disappointing profits for the departments. The agros had a bit of a recovery with the large fall fertilizer season, and the investments in large fertilizer delivery equipment has paid off as record tonnages were moved in very short periods of time. The new granular fertilizer plant in Neepawa is up and running and ready for the spring rush. For future plans, with the completion of the Neepawa Home Centre and agro projects, the co-op is shifting full attention to the planning for a new food store in Gladstone. For the past number of months, there has been work behind the scenes on several potential locations, store sizes, and product options. A meeting with the community has been scheduled for April the 20th in Gladstone to bring forward some potential ideas for a feasibility study. So on this page, we have a couple of pictures. Weekend weather provides ideal situation for McCreary's annual Maple Syrup Festival. McCreary concluded the 2023 edition of its Manitoba Maple Syrup Festival recently. And here we have pictured DeRoger's yummy stuffed maple taffy on snow being prepared at the Rice Checks Pharmacy Garden on Saturday, April 15th. Making the taffy were Teresa, Claude, Salita DeRoger, and Sophie Saquet. And here the weather was quite ideal for outdoor activities, including bonfires. And here we have a tasty snack of bannock being prepared over the open fire. Now for our sports page, an early look at the future of Neepawa Titans hockey by Owen Devereaux. A talented group of young hockey hopefuls recently hit the ice at the Neepawa Titans annual Spring Prospects Camp. The event was held at the Yellowhead Arena on April 14th and 15th and featured a collection of draft-eligible players, protected list members, and walk-ons vying to make a lasting impression. Titans head coach and general manager Ken Pearson said there were 81 players able to attend camp, including 18 from the Neepawa minor hockey program. Pearson added that he, along with the additional coaching and scouting staff, were pleased with the level of talent that was on display. We were very happy with the talent and how hard the players competed in the games, stated Pearson. We really liked how the players who had signed letters of intent took on leadership roles in practice and then carried that over to the games. Though the Prospects Camp has now concluded, things will remain very hectic for the Titans over the next few weeks as they go through their player notes and make a few decisions on who they would like to get another look at. Here we have a picture of the Neepawa Titans assistant coach Zach Hicks instructing the group of players who attended the Spring Prospects Camp at the Yellowhead Center. Okay. What else do we have here? Get that already. Now, I guess we'll read this opinion here, Carrot, Not the Stick, by Cam Dahl of the Manitoba Port Council. There are two ways to get a horse to carry a heavy load. You can hit it with a big stick, or you can provide a reward for work well done. Think of agriculture as the horse and government sustainability goals as the load farmers are being asked to carry. Too often governments reach for the regulatory stick rather than providing incentives for positive action, even though the incentive-based path will lead to greater success. Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada just wrapped up consultations on a new sustainable agricultural strategy. We are at crossroads as a country. We can either choose to accomplish our sustainability goals through an incentive-based approach rooted in collaboration and partnership, or a punitive top-down process that relies on the regulatory stick, which will in turn generate acrimony and reduce our nation's competitiveness. The first step in a collaborative, incentive-based approach would be a recognition that farmers are already partners in the development of best management practices that have generated significant gains on key sustainability benchmarks like nutrient management, water quality, and greenhouse gas reductions. For example, Manitoba's hog farmers now inject or incorporate 90% of manure used as fertilizer. Manure is only applied after soil testing determines the correct rate of application for the crop being grown. These best management practices help minimize the potential for nutrient leaching, ensure the nutrient value of manure is used to its maximum potential, and help lower greenhouse gas emissions. Other changes, like the adoption of more energy efficient buildings, can help reduce energy use, reduce costs, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Advancements in sustainable farming practices have been made across all sectors of agriculture, including conservation, tillage, and grazing practices that mimic natural ecosystems. Before farmers are asked to further advance national sustainability objectives, it is important to recognize what they are already doing. Policymakers want to see a greater number of farmers adopting new technology and management practices that they hope, and hope is a key word, will generate positive environmental outcomes. Farmers are already voracious consumers of technology. For example, hog farmers can monitor and control the temperature and ventilation in their hog barns from their phones. Advances such as global positioning systems, geographic information systems, electromagnetic flow meters, and radar and ultrasonic speed sensors are helping farmers more precisely apply manure where nutrients are needed. Technology is changing all sectors of agriculture. My dad's first combine had no cab or even a seat, while a modern combine cab looks like the cockpit of a passenger jet. We do not have to convince farmers to accept technology. Rather, they need to see that new approaches will actually work. New technology does not always work as expected. New production practices may have unexpected consequences and unknown costs. Asking farmers to move out further on the new technology adoption curve is not realistic unless these risks can be mitigated. This should be a key element of government sustainability efforts, mitigating the risks taken on by farmers who are early adopters. Again, the focus needs to be on the carrot or incentive rather than the regulatory stick. The stick held by governments comes in the form of regulations. Regulations that either require farmers to do things that do not make economic sense, prevent them from carrying out business practices that would maximize their earning potential, or set targets or limits for emissions. Targets for reductions in nitrous oxide emissions from nitrogen fertilizer use is an example of the latter. Attempting to reach sustainability goals through regulations will reduce the competitiveness of Canadian agriculture and reduce the fiscal sustainability of farming in Canada. Further, the regulatory approach will turn farmers from being partners in the sustainability journey into being opponents of government. Unfortunately, government's default position is often more regulation. This must be avoided if agriculture is to be a driver of Canada's economy and continue to be an international leader and innovator in production practices. The collaborative, incentive-based approach is not necessarily an easy path for governments to take. Canada is a large, diverse country, and innovative practices that drive fiscal and environmental sustainability in Prince Edward Island may fall flat in Saskatchewan. There must be enough flexibility in approach to account for differences in climate, soils, and ecosystems across Canada. Provincial and local governments need to be engaged when determining which new practices and technology will work in a specific region. Which path is chosen, the carrot or the stick, is really a test of how seriously governments take advancing social, economic, and environmental sustainability. If they choose the carrot, we will see positive outcomes. If they choose the regulatory stick, they are more likely interested in the politics of being seen to try to advance the file rather than actually facilitating progress. I guess there's still an article here about the Yellowhead Centre. With the final on-ice event on the arena schedule now concluded, the refrigeration system at the Yellowhead Centre has been switched off and the removal of the ice is underway. After allowing the building to warm up over the past few days, maintenance manager Tom Lissaway and the maintenance staff have begun removing the on-ice logos and scraping away the ice. Okay. Now we'll go back to this page. First, I'll read Ken Waddell's right in the center. This week it is entitled Some Big Questions. A disclaimer first. The views expressed in this column are the writer's personal views and are not to be taken as being the view of the Banner and Press staff. Our world is changing, perhaps faster than ever before. We are certainly made aware of changes, be they good or bad, faster than ever before. Examining the changes and what is driving them is an important discussion to have. Jennifer Billick is an investigative journalist, a feminist, and a leading voice, really looking behind the curtain at who is pushing changes in our society that she bluntly calls absolute madness. Rather than summarize Billick's opinions, I invite you to look at the video that you can access at the link below. I'm sorry, but I don't think I'll be able to read that out properly. Be warned that Billick's opinions line up with a lot of people's views, but fly in the face about what many universities and government agencies try to tell us. The big surprise is Billick's contention that the absolute madness she refers to is being funded by big tech, big pharma, and big medicine, not with the good of people in mind, but making huge amounts of money. When we read when we view or read much of what is in the media today and examine it with a knowledge of science, biology, and common sense, the flaws show up fairly quickly. Watching a professor speak recently who repeatedly referred to pregnant people rather than pregnant women made me curious. I did a bit of research and found that it is now not proper to say pregnant women, because women who transition to being men can have babies. Therefore, it is not only women who can be pregnant, men can too. I don't accept that, but some do. But referring back to Billick's video, she asks why there are so many changes to healthcare, science, and biology being promoted. She says, just follow the money. Universities get paid by way of grants to do research. Many grants come with strong strings attached, and unless the university agrees to toe the line, the money dries up. We, along with our children and grandchildren, are being fed a lot of information. Some of it is good, some is sketchy, and some is downright wrong. There is a backlash, and it takes many forms. Because agenda pushers realize some of their agenda is hard to push, they are prepared to back it up with fear, control, and intimidation. Dissent used to be encouraged. Logical thinking once was a good thing. Questioning and reasoning were encouraged. Nowadays, if you don't agree with someone or some group, you may be subjected to anger and hatred. In contrast, Jesus said to love your neighbor as yourself. Pretty good advice, I would say. Faced with serious changes in norms and beliefs, many people are coping by being part of the silent majority. Just swallow your objections and get through the day, the semester, the year, whatever. Just keep your head down and everything will be okay. Trouble is, everything won't be okay. Some agendas being pushed our way lead to destruction and even death. Many people just withdraw and get out from under circumstances. The steady rise in homeschooling and private schools is largely led by ideological differences with governments and their education department agendas. But the day has to come when people stand up and openly state that some things are just wrong. White supremacy is wrong, so is hating Jews, blacks, and people of color. Sexual deviation is wrong, but quite frankly is being promoted strongly everywhere, from the education system to the news media to the entertainment industry. In fact, it's hard to tell the difference between news media and the entertainment industry. Moral code, as outlined in the Christian, Jewish, and Muslim faiths, is generally a good thing, but it's hard to tell these days. It is often ridiculed rather than uplifted. But don't get me wrong here, the methods used by the Christian, Jewish, and Muslim to enforce the moral code that the holy books promote have not been right. Moral enforcement by coercion and violence is not right. Whippings, stoning, and executions are not right. Open discussion is important, and when that is stifled, nothing good can happen. Now, Homebodies by Rita Friesen. This week it's entitled Something Green. It is several years ago since I first identified my need to see green. Marie and I had just landed in Amsterdam, about to embark on another adventure. It was 7 years ago, and to celebrate turning 70, we were about to undertake a bike and barge tour in Holland. We departed to Canada April the 7th, and that year it was still snow-covered and bleak, returning April 25th, when the landscape had much improved. Truthfully, stepping off the plane, it wasn't simply the green. There was a welcome onslaught of color. The tulip fields are unforgettable. I had just completed a fairly intense study course, and it was 1 year after Ed's death. I recognized that I needed an infusion of life, and for this farmer's daughter, green is indicative of life. I've recognized at other times my need for fresh growth, for signs of spring physically and spiritually. We are gaining a deeper understanding of the power of nature to bring calm and healing. Doctors in some countries are prescribing time outdoors, simply sitting outdoors if one is unable to be active. There is something in the warmth of the sunshine, the waft of a breeze, or a gust of wind that reminds us to breathe, simply breathe. There is hope, a promise of a future when we can simply stop and listen to creation. This need for green is in part a metaphor. I recall a bleak time in living, driving through the Rocky Mountains. I saw a tree, twisted and stunted, growing bravely in a crevice in a bank of rocks. The evergreen was struggling to grow upright, struggling against gravity and wind forces, but growing it was. My first reaction was, how dare it try to live in such an adverse condition? With reflection, my reaction changed to applauding that courageous, independent, defiant tree. That image of that tree, that spot of green against a bleak and foreboding background, helped me see green, to see life and promise. Being human, I have a human nature. By spring, the green of the evergreen, a welcome sight all winter long, has been too familiar and faded. Oh, I know, it is the same green it has always been and always will be. Sadly for me right now, that's not enough. Rather, like when the fresh green of new leaves settles into summer shade of green, I can almost hear the child in me whining, I'm bored. But it's deeper than that. It's a call to growth, to living fully, to drink deep of the wonders of life. For me, the need for green speaks to a need for a revival. Like many people that I have spoken to this spring, we find this winter has been long. It was never unrelentingly cold. It was never unending blizzards. It was never extreme isolation. It was simply a long winter. Perhaps a reflection of the 2 past winters with isolation. By the time you are reading this, I will be surrounded by green. Not quite, it's still snowing out today. I will be tucked in a cabin at a waterfront. I will be surrounded by family and friends. All will be green. All right, Faithfully Yours by Neil Stroshine. This week it is entitled Choosing Good Leaders. I will be the first to admit that I am not an avid sports fan. I have favorite teams that I follow, but you won't find me sitting in my living room or office, eyes focused on a TV screen, analyzing every play made by the Blue Bombers, the Jets, the Blue Jays, or the Oilers. If they win, I'm happy. When they lose, I tell myself that they will win their next game. But as each regular season ends, my interest increases. I focus on those teams that did not make the playoffs and start wondering what changes the owners will make and how quickly they will be made. Which coaches will be fired and who will be hired to replace them? What about general managers, their assistants, and other front office personnel? Most of those questions will be answered within the first 72 hours after the season ends. Then we focus on the players. Some will choose to retire. Some will become free agents and look for a team that will pay them even more than they could get if they stayed with their existing team. Some will be traded to teams who need players with their skill sets. Whatever happens, one thing is certain. There will be some new faces in every team's locker room when next season's training camps begin. I often wonder how team owners decide who to hire as managers, and how managers decide who to hire as coaches, and which players to recruit and sign. I will never understand why a professional sports team will jump at the chance to hire a coach or manager who was just dismissed by another team. Sometimes coaches and managers who failed in one setting will thrive in another. But those instances are rare. They bring their bad habits with them to their new appointment, and sadly, it isn't very long before they find themselves being ushered out of the front office door yet again. I ask these questions for a reason. This fall, Manitobans will vote in a provincial general election. Voters in each of the 57 constituencies in this province will elect one person to represent them in the Manitoba Legislative Assembly. By law, provincial elections are held on a specific day every 4 years. This year's election date is October the 3rd. Two irrevocable principles govern Canadian elections. First, anyone who meets the requirements set out in the Elections Act can become a candidate. Candidates may represent a political party or they may run as independents. This principle ensures that voters are exposed to a wide variety of views on the issues of the day and are able to support with their vote the candidate whose views are closest to their own. The second principle is the use of a secret ballot. You are the only one who knows how you voted. No one can force you to vote for a specific candidate if you choose not to do so. Your vote is your vote. How you use it is your business and no one else's. So, now we come to the issue you and I must address in the days preceding the coming election. Our vote is our most valuable possession. We must use it wisely. We will be well served if we follow the advice of St. James, stating, if you lack wisdom, ask God and it will be given to you. Some of that wisdom can be found in the stories of men and women whom God recognized as good leaders. We will study the first of these leaders in next week's column. Now, a letter to the editor. It's entitled The Life You Long For, by Ross McBride of Neepawa, Manitoba. He writes, Dear Editor, smoking and cancer. I know there are stats and warnings out there, but they seem to go unheeded much of the time. I just want to try the best way I can to reach people and take them into my world as honestly and bluntly as I can. I don't pretend to speak for all people with cancer. I speak only from where I am. My introduction to smoking was in grade 8. The first cigarettes I inhaled actually made me sick. But I persisted until my system would tolerate the drug effect it had on me. Just the price of being cool like the other guys, I guess. Over time, I became addicted, and by the time I was 42 years old, I was having the first signs that there was something wrong. 15 months later, and 2 days after my 43rd birthday, a doctor told me castration was the best he could do for me. Words cannot describe how I felt that day, but I did not and would not go there. The sad irony, though, is the cigarettes that I had once thought macho ended up taking my macho from me. The nicotine gamble of my youth ultimately ended in cancer of the prostate gland, a slow-growing mass on my right kidney, and growths on both lungs. The spin-off from all this has been a 9-year battle with leukemia, bringing me to where I am now. My cancer, if not aggressive, is like all cancers, relentless. With the physical harm comes the mental hell. Know that once you have cancer, you never get used to it. I have heard it said that people learn to live with it. I have not learned to live with it, and not because I haven't had the practice. There isn't a day that I don't think about it. There are distractions, but no escapes. Once you smoke your way to cancer, there is no going back. No do-overs. Life is, as you now know it, will end and become the life you will long for every day for the rest of your life. This is where I put myself. I thought I was invincible. Of course, nobody is. I know it's not easy to stop smoking. Ask your doctor to help you. Do it before it's too late. My story is just one of millions, but if telling it persuades just one of you to stop smoking, then it will not be in vain. So, I only have one page left to read, and that's not it. Read that one already. Let's be back here. Here we go. And it's Looking Back by Casper Werhan. Unbelievable. It goes back 125 years ago. 1898. Ooh. An irate ratepayer of Rosedale remarked to a pressman the other day that the roads in his neighborhood were very bad, but he presumed there was no hope of improvement this year. It would take the council all its time paying for audits, indemnity, legal advice, etc. But what's to blame? The kicker admitted that he had not voted last municipal election day. The good news comes from Wabigoon that an exceedingly rich strike has been made on the Neepawa gold mine. I didn't even know they had a gold mine. And the owners, who are nearly all residents of this town and vicinity, are in jubilant spirits. Nothing definite has been given out as to the extent of the reported fine, but it's stated by those who should know most that, from present indications, several of the principal stockholders will become millionaires. The 10-year-old son of Claude Still of Spring Hill was thrown from a horse's back on Saturday evening, sustaining a compound fracture of the arm at the elbow. It is such a break as cannot be satisfactorily repaired, and there is a strong probability of the boy being crippled for life, or he may possibly lose the injured member. He is being cared for at the residence of W.H. Ewer in town, but may be taken to the Winnipeg Hospital. 100 years ago, in 1923, in Franklin, the town of Franklin, Harry Bowser of the electrical store in Neepawa has taken over a large territory as official agent for the Singer Sewing Machine Company. He will carry at his store on Hamilton Street a full line of the latest machines, both manual and electric, sewing machine motors, repair parts, oils, needles, etc. Walter Wiley, local blacksmith, has taken over the agency for Massey Harris Implements. All repair parts and also new machinery of this reliable make can be obtained through him. Also strange how many cars will be on the road as soon as they are passable, in spite of threats to leave cars idle in view of stringent times. 75 years ago, in 1948, Reg Williams, formerly of Neepawa, who has been managing a store in Nesbitt, Manitoba for the past year, has moved to Melville, Saskatchewan, where he has purchased a business. Also, Neepawa has been without the service of a town band for some years, but indications of a recycle of this splendid organization are very much encouraging. The courtroom will be the scene of a meeting Monday night at 8 o'clock, when it is hoped a good number of interested people will be on hand. 50 years ago, in 1973, the Manitoba Housing and Renewal Corporation is proceeding with a 12-unit elderly persons housing project in McCreary, and with 2 family housing projects for a total of 16 units in Winnipeg-Osis. Construction of a 15-unit elderly persons housing project in Winnipeg-Osis has been recommended as a result of a survey of need, but the corporation is encountering some difficulty in purchasing land for this project. It was announced last week by A.R. Adam, MLA for St. Rose constituency. Also, the Arden CKDM Talent Night held Friday, April 6, was a tremendous success with 23 very talented contestants taking part. The total intake for the evening's efforts was over $3,600, and the pledges are still coming in. And lastly, 20 years ago, in 2003, new labeling requirements imposed by the federal government are expected to negatively impact Manitoba food manufacturers. The new regulations require most prepackaged foods to carry a mandatory nutrition facts table, listing how many calories and how much each of 13 key nutrients are contained in a specified amount of food. Also, a 12-person steering committee was formed Tuesday night to further explore a community purchase of the Neepawa natives. The purchase was formed following a fan forum at which Natives owner Gaynor Vivian presented a strong case for community ownership of the Manitoba Junior Hockey League franchise. And last but not least, we have the Roxy Theatre upcoming show, April 21st and 22nd, showtime at 7:30 p.m. at the Roxy Theatre. Will show the movie called Champions. It's about a former minor league basketball coach who was ordered by the court to manage a team of players with intellectual disabilities. He soon realizes that despite his doubts, together this team can go further than they ever imagined. And it stars Woody Harrelson, and I do remember them saying that this movie was made in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And then the weekend after that, the show is called the Super Mario Brothers movie. So that does it for this week's edition of the Neepawa Banner and Press. Thank you so much for joining us, and maybe we'll see you again next time. Bye for now.